Welcome to One Chapter, One Thought. I'm Pastor Chris from Lincraft Bible Church in New Jersey, and every weekday I read one chapter of the New Testament and offer one brief devotional thought. Today's reading is from the book of Revelation, chapter 14. Then I looked, and behold, on Mount Zion stood the Lamb, and with him 144,000, who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven like the roar of many waters and like the sound of loud thunder. The voice I heard was like the sound of harpists playing on their harps, and they were singing a new song before the throne, and before the four living creatures, and before the elders. No one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. It is these who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. It is these who go and follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These have been redeemed from mankind as firstfruits for God and the Lamb. In their mouth no lie was found, for they are blameless. Then I saw another angel flying directly overhead, with an eternal gospel to proclaim those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, language, and people. He said with a loud voice, "Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come, and the worship of him who made heaven and earth, the sea and the springs of water." Another angel, a second, followed, saying, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the great, she who made all the nations drink the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality." And another angel, a third, followed them, saying with a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast and its image, and receives the mark on his forehead or his hands, he also will drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength in the cup of his anger, and will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of his holy angels and the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, these worshippers of the beast and its image, and whoever receives the mark of its name." Here is a call for endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. And I heard a voice from heaven saying, "Write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Blessed indeed, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them." Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and seated on the cloud one like the Son of Man, with a golden crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. And another angel came out of the temple, calling with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, "Put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, for the harvest of earth is fully ripe." So he who sat on the cloud swung his sickle across the earth, and the earth was reaped. And another angel came out of the temple in heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the altar, and the angel who had authority over the fire, and called with a loud voice to the one who had the sharp sickle, "Put in your sickle and gather the clusters from the vines of the earth, for its grapes are ripe." So the angel swung his sickle across the earth and gathered the grape harvest of the earth and threw it in the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood flowed from the winepress as high as a horse's bridle for 1,600 stadia. One thought. This chapter wraps up the fourth cycle of 7 that began back in chapter 12. And in this cycle, there were 7 visions of warfare, with the church suffering and yet persevering. But the main point in this chapter, as it reaches this end of the cycle, is to encourage Christians to remain faithful despite opposition. In verses 6 through 13, 3 angels proclaim messages of judgment, warning people to turn from their opposition to God and his people. And in the midst of that, what is the church to do? In verse 12, he says that this is a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. So the church must endure. This is one of the prevailing themes in the book of Revelation. As we gain a glimpse of who Jesus is, that he has conquered death, he has defeated the devil, and he is going to one day defeat all evil, vindicate the righteous, and judge the wicked. When we see him in this book, we must endure and press on to him. We see this theme of endurance come out in chapter 1, verse 9, and then in chapter 2, verses 2 and 3, 19, and chapters 3, verse 10, and now in chapter 13, 10, and here as well. So this book of Revelation is calling us to endure despite opposition, despite persecution. Believers are not to take vengeance in their own hand. They're not to use violence to get their way. They're not to try to use the tools of the enemy to defeat the enemy, but they are to cling to their faith, believe in Christ, love others, serve the poor, be the church, and endure. And we see, though, that we're also to obey. The church is described as those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. I think one of the best ways I've heard obedience talked about in the Christian life is I heard a speaker one time say that obedience is God's love language. Right? If you know anything about love languages, these are ways that we feel loved, right? Like acts of service. As people do acts, serve us, we're like, oh man, I feel so loved. Or maybe words of affirmation and encouragement. People say like, hey, great job. That really means a lot to us. Well, what brings joy to God? It is our obedience. Obedience is the way that it's not that the way that we get saved, but it's the way we express our salvation. And in marked contrast to the world, we are to keep God's commandments. Those commandments are most supremely demonstrated in the life of Jesus. And then Jesus instructs us through the New Testament letters in how we are to live. Supremely, we're to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love one another, and love our neighbor as ourselves.